Sorry, I got distracted. You know how that is. All right, we're back here at the work table. We're going to pull some handles on the cups you've made. In front of me, I've got some cups that are actually great handle demos to show you all the varieties of handles that are possible. What I'm going to do for the video is show you how to make something called the pulled handles. Now, the pulled handle is a traditional handle for thrown pots. I think it looks elegant. It's one of the most comfortable handles that you can put on a cup. It has an elegant curve to it. So we're going to learn in this video how to do the pulled handle, but there are many other variations that use coils and slabs, and you can try these out and see which ones feel the best. We'll have these in the studio for you to take a look at. Okay, so I've got just a basic cylinder shape, and it has achieved leather hard consistency. What's the best consistency? Well, you see a slight flex. See that when I press on this, there's just a gentle flex in there. Excuse me. That's about where you want the cup to be when you're ready to pull a handle. The other thing is I'm going to go ahead and clean up the bottom before I put the handle on here. So you put a bevel in there when you threw, but at this stage, let's go ahead and clean this up a teeny bit. I'm going to take my thumb and just run my thumb over this bevel to polish it a bit. This is a nice finishing detail and one of the craftsmanship issues with cups. People that know something about handmade cups always flip the cup over to take a look at how you finish the bottom. So I'm going to do a little bit of kind of cleaning and polishing there. There's no need to do this at the dry stage if you can do it at the wet stage. So we're trying to avoid sanding and creating dust. So see, nice shadow there at the table. So this is ready for a handle. So I've got a piece of clay here that's been thrown once. Pulled handles work really well with clay that's been used once, this like flop clay, because it's going to be very plastic. I've got a bucket of water, I've got my needle tool, clean up sponge, and I also have a hand towel here because you're going to need to dry off your hand before you attach the handle to the cup. So this particular type of handle starts with something called a lug, and a lug is just a handle that hasn't been finished completely. I'm going to take this chunk of clay and I'm going to pound it with my flat hand until it's about the shape of a hot pepper, big carrot, something like this. And then we're going to start by pulling a lug from this chunk of clay. Now, a big chunk of clay like this, you can make many handles, lugs. Looks like this. I'm going to get my hand wet, and then I'm going to start to pull down on this clay. You'll notice I'm rotating the clay as I pull it into this long icicle shape. And the reason you want to do that is the bones of your hands will start to form grooves in the handle if you don't rotate it. So I've got the top pinched a bit with my fingerprints so I can rotate it easily, and my hand moves around this to form a long icicle shape. Now once I'm down to about 1 inch down here, I'm going to switch to the second end motion, which is a flattening stroke, which looks like this. I'm going to take my thumb and my index finger, touch them together, and then these 3 fingers are going to be in front. So it looks like this from the side. Flatten, flatten, flatten. See it getting thinner? Flatten. Then flip it around, flatten it from this side. Flatten, flatten, flatten. So this is going to cause the lug to taper, again, between the fingers like this. Don't do just a scissor. That's not quite enough control. Instead, use the extra fingers. I want this handle lug to taper this way as well. I've got it tapering this way, but I also want it to taper this way. So I'm going to go back to what I call the milking stroke, because it's a little bit like milking a cow. In this case, I'm going to put pressure on these edges here to taper it. Taper, taper, flip it back around this way, taper, taper. So you see it tapering in both directions. Tapering this way from the side, but also tapering gently this way. I'm going to scrape my hand off on my bucket. I'm going to take this piece, which we're going to call the lug. I'm going to cut it off from the big chunk of clay. So now I have what you might call a handle blank. We call this a lug. and this is what's going to be attached to the cup. I'm going to pull the handle again once it's attached to the cup because I want this to look as if it grows out of the cup. It should have an organic, fluid curve as it comes off the pot. I could simply stick this on here and attach it, but it would look clunky and like it was made by a Neolithic culture, and we're more advanced than that. Okay, so how does it work? How do you get this to attach here without falling off? Here you learn the important operation called scratch and slip. Not scratch and sniff, scratch and slip. Here's how it works. Take your needle tool, decide where you're going to attach the cup handle. Is it going to be up near the rim, a little below the rim? Will you make it in the center? So you make a decision about where you're going to attach. Think also about ergonomics. That is, where would be good balance? I mean, ergonomics is the science of how the body fits tools and implements. So is it one finger? Is it two-finger handle? Is it three-finger handle? So you make some decisions about what you think is going to work best. With a cylinder like this, I'm just going to do an attachment point near the rim. So here's what I do. I'm going to take the lug and show you. See the cross-section of the lug? I'm going to scratch a texture into the location where I'll be attaching this lug that's just as big as that cross-section. And the scratching is going to create extra surface area for that handle to attach. Now I'm going to make a texture that looks a lot like Velcro. It's really important that you scratch this much. If you don't do it, your handles will be more prone to falling off. So take a look at both of these. Scratch texture and handle lug. The scratch texture might even be a teeny bit bigger than the cross section of the lug. That's fine because we want to be able to force out any air that's in the grooves there. Next step, I'm going to put the cup back onto the table. I'm going to get a little bit of this nice gooey slip from my throwing bucket. I'm going to spread a thin layer like mayonnaise on this surface there. I only have to apply the slip to the lug. I don't have to apply the slip to the handle, to the cup. I'm going to support the inside of the cup with my left hand. I'm going to set the the lug across my hand, sort of like I'm holding a sword, like this. Put my thumb on top of the lug, left hand on the inside, and then I touch it to that texture I made, and then I'm going to gently wiggle it until it starts to conform to the curve of the cup. You'll also notice that slip will start to squish out. Now there's also a tendency for the cup handle not to seal completely at the corners, so the second thing I do is I pinch the corners in to close the gap up on each side there. At this point, it's permanent. It's not going to come off. But it's not real pretty. So we're going to make this look much more fluid. So here's the next step. I'm going to take my arm and I'm going to make the letter Y. I'm going to park the cup base in that Y like this. So now the handle's going vertical. I've got it up near eye level here. I can also rotate the cup around, so if I want to pull from the back or the front, it's real easy to move back and forth. So first step, get the cup handle wet. Again, we want that slippery. We don't want it grabbing, creating too much friction. I'm going to go ahead and polish the back side of the handle where your finger is going to rest by taking the tip of my thumb and just raking it back and forth over that seam till it closes up. And I can do a little bit on the top here too, so I'm essentially finishing that seam a bit. So at this stage, I'm ready to go ahead and thin this handle till it's the appropriate thickness. I'll start with a couple of milking strokes. 1, 2, front, back, to get the taper established again. And then a couple more flattening strokes. Flatten. Now see it's getting longer and more tapered. Don't need all of it, so I'll take a little bit off. A couple more milking strokes. Taper, flatten. So it's gradually getting longer. So this long tongue is growing longer and longer. This also will give me a chance to show you the third hand movement that I call the edge stroke. So I've got it tapering this way, it's getting thinner. And if I want to do a correction on the edge here, I can actually let my fingers be a track that runs along one side of the handle, and then take my thumb and rake it down that edge like this. Edge stroke, and the same thing on this side. Edge stroke, edge stroke, so I can use some more specific finger contact to control what's happening at the edge if I want it rounded or more sharp. It's also a technique for creating a groove down the center if you like the idea of a thumb groove. Press, stroke, quick strokes, quick strokes. That's the other important thing. Make sure the strokes are quick and fluid. Okay. Got a real strong connection point right here. That's very important. The upper connection point is the most important contact point for the handle. It has to be strong enough to support the weight of the cup and the liquid that's inside. This part that's tapering can be a lot thinner. What's the rule about how thick this handle should be? Here's a general rule of thumb. Take a look at the thickness of the rim. The thickness of the rim is approximately the same as the thickness of the handle. In a way that makes sense because we almost imagine that the handle is a cross-section of the cylinder or the cross-section of the cup that's been attached to the side here. All right, so we're now ready to attach the bottom. So I'm going to switch my hand position like this. Kind of like I'm going to take a bite out of a piece of corn. Okay, so this hand is now supporting the bottom. I'm going to grab the tail with my right hand. I'm going to put my thumb on top. And then as I start to right the cup, see that in profile? I'm going to look at the profile and see how much handle does it need. My thumb is going to help me make that decision. I'm going to check it for vertical alignment. And then check it from the side. Does the curve look fluid? Does the negative space between the handle and the cup look good? If so, touch it gently to the base here. Take your needle tool, cut off any excess that you don't need. Don't need to scratch and slip the bottom. As long as you're using clay that's at that cheddar cheese stage, you don't need to scratch that because this handle is really gooey at this stage. Then we get to finish off the base here. If you can zoom in here, take a look. This part here, you've got a couple options on how you can finish it off. I can simply put a big thumbprint here and be done. I could try to gradually smooth it down and even smooth it till it looks like it grows back into the cup. And some people like the fishtail where I smear like that. Sound effects optional. And we have a good poster over here on the wall that shows a bunch of different handle approaches that you could experiment with. Okay, take a look here. Take a look here at the top of the cup. Sometimes when you're making a handle, this top will get dented in a little bit or misshapen. So after you finish pulling the handle, go ahead and correct this inside if it needs it by running a wet finger over that. The other thing I want to show you is this. If the handle has drooped in the process of pulling it, don't fret. Gravity is your friend in this case because you can flip this cup over, give it a gentle stroke on the inside here to get it back to the curve that you're after, and then let it dry upside down for a while until that's firm enough to flip over. Avoid the temptation to come back and mess with this. Don't touch it after this. Don't come back in and start touching up, running over, back and forth until you feel like you've got it right. It's just going to look really ratty if you do that. So the best thing to do, oops, I messed it up. The best thing to do is just pull it, attach it, correct the curve, and then leave it be until it stiffens up to leather hard. Once it's leather hard, if you need to come back and do a little correction, then that's the best time to do it. But you can see I really kind of messed it up by doing that. Okay, so those are pulled handles. Your cup should have pulled handles for your assignment, and when we get in class, I'll show you some of the other techniques using coils and slabs to attach handles as well. See you in class.